Okay, it is 5 o'clock p.m. and we're going to go ahead and get started with the lecture and welcome you and each of you to week four. Week four. I told you now we're in the second half of this course, and that I learned a number of things from your papers. I've already started grading your week three papers. Some of you will see my remarks, but I'm going to talk about a few things as soon as we at the outset before I really go into the materials. So I'm going to go right ahead and I'm going to share my screen. Okay, share my screen. Okay, so again, it is now at the point where we are, we're 3 more weeks to go. The course will be over on the 14th of September, which is a Friday, not a Saturday and not a Sunday, but the 14th is a Friday, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. Now, I want to bring a couple of things to your attention that I noticed. First of all, number one, just talking about the assignment that I graded, the contract, the Module 2 written assignment. It wasn't a big deal with you filling in the template and putting any information there. You didn't lose points for that. But most of you lost points because of one of the three answers that you had to give. Answer number 2 called for explaining why the contract had to be in writing. And I had already talked about this. I provided you with information. Many of you just went right past it and wrote some general language, to keep people honest or so that you can have evidence in court. But what I was looking for was one of those elements of the statute of frauds, or my legs. And the element that I was looking for, many of you just went right past it. And I gave it comments in the grade book about it, and that was the letter G, because you recall that the price was $710, around that area. But the bottom line is that under the statute of frauds, in order to enforce a contract, and why it needed to be in writing was because the goods were over $500. And that's the key. That is what I gave that little thing to use. And only about 2 or 3 of you really came right out and said that. And goods over $500. And those of you didn't, I put a little comment in why you lost your points is because of the fact that you did not catch that number 2. That number 2 answer required goods over $500, and that's what I wanted to see, and that's what would have been satisfactory to get you all of your points there. So I ran across also something similar to that in the written assignment for number 3, where again the letter, some of you started saying that the reason why the written assignment that had to do with intoxication and drinking, you didn't talk about that as much because that was capacity or competency, but it's capacity. But the thing, when you start talking about even the statute of frauds, people tried to use goods over $500 because it was $100,000. It's not goods over $500. It's the letter L, because they were talking about selling a house or property, which is land. So L is the one element that you have to use. and that fits also under the UCC, Uniform Commercial Code. And so in your readings, you get that. But just remember, almost every assignment that I've kind of looked at them, you're going to have some element that you can respond with using my legs and the information that I provided to you to help you and guide you. And by the time you get to week 6, you will have dealt with all of them pretty much. So those are the things I want to say about the assignments. Now, I also want to say this. A few of you have not really read the cover, the course home instructions. Right here where I'm putting my mouse, this circle, this right up under my picture. It says you are required to conduct research for all papers. That means the sole source of your paper can't be the textbook. You'll lose points. And a student said to me, well, why can't we use the textbook if that's where we got it? Why do we have to do research? And almost fell out of my chair when I had that question asked to me, because that's one of the aspects of what we teach you to do. The textbook is a product of research by the author, and that it is a starting point. It is a source where you get information, and you don't take that because you already have that. We don't want you to copy it out of the text. We want you to go and find some sources. We have the Library and Learning Center resource, which we point out to you on this home page. You know, the library guides at edu.library, which I'm just going to click on just for a minute, and you could go down, and it helps you to find what you need to find. And then there's also a section that tells you where to find articles by subject, ebooks, so forth, APA guide, and all of that. So we don't want you to use the textbook alone. The idea is to do research as well. So anyway, back to the point here is that also if you look at the assignment, and I'll just give you the assignment for this week just to show you that it says this. If you look at the lesson content and you look under where it talks about assignments, you will see, for example, for the written assignment, identity theft PowerPoint, okay, that's coming up this week. That's what you're going to be doing for week 4. But look at what it says. And then you have a course project, open the doors to your business. But notice what it says. It says additional time, it says in terms of it, for study. Research is the second element. It's also in discussion, and it is also in your project. So research is essential and very important. We want to teach you how to, and then one of the critical, one of the transferable skills is information literacy. That has to do with research, and I talked about that during the open house. So it is very important that you understand that element. It's not as simple as you go into your textbook. We don't want you to do that. You know, any kid could do that. But the idea is we want you to learn, because you learn by doing research. I am a natural researcher not because I'm a professor, but because I was a lawyer. I have to research for all of my cases. I have to make sure that material that's given to me, I can find things to support my arguments and make my presentation. Not just 1, 2, or 3. Just keep looking until you find. But you don't have to have a lot of them. But if you use your textbook alone, you'll lose 2 points, and some of you. But the biggest issue are the next 2. And I say this over and over, and it is also in the rubric. All. And I say this because many of you will lose 5 points right off of the bat because of this. Should be in APA format. which means citations in the body of your paper, providing the sources that you utilize, that you discovered in your research, and references at the end. Not or, but and. And you will lose 5 points every time. Then I tell you, you will lose 1 point for not providing a cover sheet. Someone sent me a message, do I need a cover sheet for this, for that contract that we did, that you guys did in week 3? And I sent back the answer, yes, all written assignments, all written assignments. So you want to, but I want to show you going back and scrolling down all the way to the rubrics. I guarantee you at the bottom, you're going to see 5 points for APA. 5 points for APA in week 3. 5 points, with the exception of, yeah, there it is right there. 5 points APA. Grammar APA. All the way to the end, 6 APA. Of course, though, when you were doing this sheet here, it wasn't really an APA issue. I told you, fully explains why this particular contract needs to be in writing. I already talked about that. And I didn't fully take 8 points for most of you. I took 5 because you tried to explain it, but you didn't give me what fully. You didn't fully give it to me. Rough draft here. Look, number 3. Now, correct spelling, punctuation, APA. Now, when I grade that rough draft, I'm not going to really be as dogmatic as somebody's mic is open. You need to mute your mic. Okay. All right, they did. And so you get down to that. So APA is required all the way down. You got to look at the rubric, guys. You got to look at it. It's there. It's right there in front of you. Not only is it there, but it's also in the course information. This is important because I say at the very beginning of the course, at the top, you will see this. Let's see, let me move this out of the way. It says, not only after the 25th hour of the day, I say APA and critical thinking are very important in the grading of assignments. But APA is extremely important. And I stress using the rubrics. That is how you're going to be able to do, because from day one, I laid that out. So it is very, 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 I know I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm just trying to get you guys back to getting 5 points. Just think, those of you who complete the assignment for assignment number 4 that you're doing this week, and you don't do the APA, you're going to go from 35 to 30 points. And then if you don't do the other, look at what happens in week 5. You go from 30 to 25 points. And if you don't have a cover sheet, you go to 24 points. And if you don't cover the issues, and look at what it says, from research. Research, it's got to be research. That's our whole objective in this institution. And it should be a goal in any institution of higher learning. So that's very important. So I want to say that out on the outset so that you guys can fix it. It is very important. I try to, in my lectures, to break things down in little pieces and give you a step-by-step of expectations. But I know what happens is that you got 2-3 classes, been there, done that, had that happen to me. However, what I had to make a decision to do, and it helped me, and I want to help you, is I decided that waste make haste. Haste make waste. I'm sorry, I said that wrong. And that I decided that I needed to put my best foot forward and act like I have just one class. And the class that I'm working on at that time is the only class I have. Then I got to do the other class, and then the other class, and then the other class. There were times I had 4. And I had to turn in excellent assignments because I wanted excellent grades, because I had a goal, even back in college, of going to law school, as which you already heard. So I'm trying to get you prepared for the very same thing. I've been accused of being tough. Well, I'll go with that if that means that I'm trying to give you the best possible information. I don't operate like other people. I can't speak for other people. My name is Mr. Wright. No pun intended. Yeah, it was. But anyway, you guys get the point, okay? I knew when I came to class today, after I graded the papers, and I spent the whole weekend. Oh, man, I was so busy grading papers. I graded about 400 papers because I had fallen behind. But now I'm up and up to it. But here's what I want you to do. And you don't have to say anything right now in the lecture concerning this. You don't have to say, I got it, or any of those things. You need to. And then, again, I encourage people, don't just go to the lecture to get the keyword. Don't get involved with the lecture and then start multitasking. If you were in class sitting in front of me now and you were doing something that was different, which I discovered from one of my students recently, that you gotta, if you were sitting in class doing that, I would say, I would walk over by you and the whole class would look at you because they would see. I wouldn't be embarrassing you, but you'd be getting busted out there because you're supposed to be focusing in on this. Why? Because you need to learn this material so you can be good at what you're going to become, so that you are the best of the best, the cream of the crop. That's why I said, don't call me and ask me how to get a C. A student sent me a message already asking me at this point, what can I do to pass your course? I said, I don't know the answer to that. That's in your ball. That's in your court. So, again, I feel obligated to do this today. And everybody who listens to my lectures and not just listen for the key word will bode well. And I'm looking at, I can see at the halfway point who's got it, who's pointing to it, who's trying, and then I can tell those who are just putting something together to submit it. You're spending good money, people. You're paying good money. I know you do. And you want to get the max for your profit. As you are all in the field of business, you want to do a ROI. Do you all know what ROI means? Can somebody type in the chat box what ROI means? Any of you know what ROI means? It's a business term. You know? Okay. One person said no. Do you know? I'm not going to call names. Do you know? Okay. No, it's taking too long. It's return on investment. You ever heard that term before now? Return on investment? You heard that? Type back to me. You heard of that before? Return on investment? Okay. Return on investment in business means very simply this. What you get out of your investment. And you want to maximize that, which means you want to get the most out of your investment. Your investment here is in your education. So how do you get the most? Follow the steps. listen to the lead that I give you in my classes and try to get the same information out of your professors. Don't try to make them me, but you just the habits. Here's what I tell students, and I mean what I'm saying, because I go on the basis of me. I got what I got because the opportunities were put to me and challenged to me to go to the highest level. And I said, I'm going to accept the challenge. You know, like people have the ice bucket challenge and the other kind of challenges that you've heard about in the last few years. Well, I accepted the A challenge, the challenge to get an A. And I knew that if I had to do that, I had to follow the instructions. I have to dot my I's, cross T's, and stuff like that. Well, I would if I had the time to. You're going to have to prepare that. You already heard my story about what I went through in college, and you're no different than me. You got two eyes, a nose, a mouth, two ears, as far as I know, two legs, two hands, and if you don't even have those, you still have one thing I do know in your head, and that's a good brain. So let's just do it. Okay, my soapbox stuff for the day. Let's do it like Nike said. All right. So I'm making a contract with you. I'm making an offer, and then you need to accept the offer. And the consideration given is a good grade. Bam. You signed on because you're taking the course. Okay. A little bit of stuff for you. All right. Let's get more into the lecture itself. The fourth week, week 4. Again, this is not an 11-week course. This is the second half. We've already had mid. That's week 3. So now we got actually 2.5 weeks, pretty much 2.5 weeks. But you know what I mean. Regulations, agencies, and partnerships are what we're going to talk about today. And one of the things that we will discuss is ways to protect yourself in terms of companies. I was looking at, dreaming of your business organization. I will talk about that in a minute. But the point of the matter is, I'm going to talk to you about agencies, regulations, partnerships, and things like that. What type of business organizations that exist, why, what are the advantages and disadvantages. And then you're going to look at these flashcards, which I'm going to just go over a little bit with you, but you can do those on your own. But the discussion assignment that the initial post was due last night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time, dreaming of your business organization. What would be the best possible business organization for you? And a few of you have gone with sole proprietorship, and I explained in the discussion forum already that if you looked at it, because whenever anybody puts something out there, that's why I told students, don't put stuff like my assignment's going to be late on the discussion forum, because everybody's looking at that. Send that to me in an email. But the point of the matter is that that is not the best method, and I'll elaborate on that in a moment. So let's do last night, your initial post, your reply post due Saturday, 11:59 p.m. Finally, your written assignment is, and look what I said, identify theft PowerPoint and course project opening the doors to your business. Notice I had boldly in there what I've already said. Pay close attention to the rubrics. Very, very, very important. Now I put it in all caps and I put an exclamation mark because it is very, 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 very important that you note that, okay? I'm not as dogmatic with the discussion post in terms of rubric. I follow it. However, you guys have already kind of seen the mode that I'm rolling in, and that by my comments, you know that if you're late, you're going to lose a point, and so forth and so on. Mid-quarter survey, please, if you get a chance, take some time out and do that. It helps me. about that. And so, just let me know. I am aware of the fact that, uh, what some people are going to say is that, well, it took a long time to get the grades. Yes, I accepted that because I got hit with 3 classes on the 8th of August when I had 2 others that had about 70 students in it. But anyway, that's not an issue for you. That's just what happened to me in reality, the truth. I had overload and I had to catch up. And anyway, I'm up to speed on that now. But do the mid-quarter survey. Let me know what I can do to help you in the second half. I'd like to be able to look at and see those kind of things. All right? And then you know why my adversity is springboard to success is there. All right. I'm very conversational with you guys. It's like I'm sitting in the room with you. That's how I approach these live lectures because of the fact that you're all over the United States. And I had one student that was out of the country and still had me, and I was overwhelmed by that. I thought that was exciting. So here we are, right here where the mouse is, starting with the 27th, with your reading assignment that I just got through talking about. It's on your calendar. Your initial post I talked about, your lecture we're in now, your reply post, and then your written assignment that is details in drinking. Oh, that's, wait a minute. How'd that happen? I jumped, that's why. 27th, then I'm down here at the 2nd, my bad. So your assignment here is identify their PowerPoint. And then both of these are due along with your course project, opening the doors to your business, and we're going to go over that in a minute in the rubric to make sure you got that. Okay? And then, you start work that after that on Labor Day. Yes, you will still be operating, and then we'll have our next lecture a week from today, which will be our next to our last lecture. You also are aware of the fact that the live lectures are recorded and contained and found on the course homepage, as well as me emailing it to you. Here it is. In case you, again, right under rubrics, keep going all the way down, and you see that. And it tells you every Wednesday, 5 to 6 Central, and there are the recordings right there. And after today, I will upload week 4 and send it to you as well. So now, with that being said, let's get right into our week 4 module. Okay, because we're almost halfway through this. All right. So the assignment is to identify theft PowerPoint, and it tells you what you have to do. I'm not going over there with all the things. Identify what is theft, and then so forth and so on. And then it tells you what to do. Make sure you provide what it requires in here. And then a minimum of how many slides? 12. If you get 10, if you get 9 or 8, you're going to lose points because it tells you what the minimum is. Just like it tells you a lot of times what the minimum number of pages. And it explains to you what you have to do in terms of that, okay? So you want to make sure you follow that. Now, when I say these are in here, but so too is this. It tells you a due date, which is going to say the 2nd, as soon as it comes up. Like Jeopardy, there we go. 11:59 p.m., that's when it's due, for possible 35 points. To get 35 points, what you have to do is follow all of these steps and look at the rubric that's on your course homepage. It lays it out for you. okay? But it tells you when it is due. Very, very, very important. But the rubrics are so, so important to make sure that you've satisfied all of these things that are on here. There's a lot of information there. Okay? Then your other written assignment is down here. Open the doors to your business. Now it tells you here, APA formatted, but I already told you. I already gave you the spiel on that. You don't even have to look for it. You're going to say, oh, yeah, it's in, Professor Wright said all, and all means all. 1 to 2 pages. Double space. That brings me to another point, which I haven't dinged anybody for, but I'm reminding you that all your papers should be written double space, all of them. Oh, and then one other thing I do want to tell you, and I've kind of commented to some of you about this in my grading that I'm in the process of doing for the week 3, the drinking doesn't mix with the contract deal. You don't have to, I mean, it's okay, but you don't have to copy the facts. I already know what the facts are, because when I run them through Grammarly, it's going to give me a Grammarly hit. Now, I kind of recognized that after I thought about it, and I says, well, it makes it high, but I know why, because you're taking material that's from the module already, and so that's copying it without giving credit for it. But I already know where it's coming from, so that's not a big deal. But what I'm explaining to you is that I'm more interested in your explanation to the information under it. You can continue to do that in single space, but when you write your answers, to submit your answers, make sure they're double spaced. Make sure there's citations in the body to support your statements, and references at the end. And so it is very, 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 very important. And then you have the cover sheet as well. So then opening the doors of your business, you know when that's due. Again, you can click on that, and it'll tell you right away. It's due Sunday, and it tells you get 30 possible points. All right? Going back again for a final time looking at this before we get into the lesson is this. Here it is. This is your rubric. How you get your points. Satisfy each of these elements. And this is what I would do. I would have my rubric as a checklist. Check. Did I identify theft? Did I describe how the crime was committed? Don't put it like defines identity theft and then write identity theft definition under it. Don't do that. No, this is for you to check. This is like the skeleton of the meat that you want to put on here. The meat is the answer to these issues and put on here. And you go all the way down, okay? And tells you how many slides to provide for certain points. And I will be looking at that very, very, very carefully. A minimum of 12 slides, and then make sure that you provide APA citations with the information that you glean to go in your slide. Down to the, tying it back again to the module 4. This is your project, opening the doors to your business, and tell you how you can get 5 points by doing this, how you can get 2/3 of your points by doing this. Then, so like I said, imagine that you don't follow this. You don't do this. You're going to get 25 points, and that's going to be a drop in your grade. So that's why I'm taking the time to do that. Okay. So now let me talk to you in the remaining minutes that we have here about what we're talking about. Let me give you a little law talk, a little stuff here. So we're going to talk about regulations, agencies, and partnerships. and then we're going to take a look at how flashcards, so forth and so on. We're not going to go back down here or any of these things. So you can, yeah, that's fine. The answer is yes. You could do that. Yeah, that's a good question too, because of the way it's written. Uh, so the question that was asked, and you could probably see it, is do we want the 12th slide to contain the references? The answer is yes. Yeah, you could do that at the end, and that's the way it's usually done. If you think about PowerPoints that are set up, you usually do see it like that. It gives the sources of the material in the slides. However, though, in the slide itself, it gives the citation, just like it does in the paper. So it'll say like theft is taking, and I'm not going to tell you the answer, blah 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 blah, and then you'll cite, you know, John Jones, 1978. Then in your resource references, you'll have the source that John Jones, whatever you got, and so forth, and so on. So you got it now? Did that clarify it for you? Okay, awesome. All right. So anyway, if I go too fast, like I said, slow me down. Professor Wright sometimes gets to moving, and I get in a rotation, in a roll. So I haven't taught business law in a long time, but it's like when you rode a horse or, you know, rode a bike. You know how you haven't rode a bike in a long time, and you get on that bike, and all of a sudden you say, "Ooh, I still know how to ride it." Well, that's the same thing I know about contracts. But contracts kind of run the world, so it's kind of essential. So let's talk about this. So there are many organizations that you're going to encounter in business, depending on the kind of business that you're in. And almost everybody will come into contact with the IRS. I don't know anybody who won't be dealing with the IRS that has a business. It's like essential. So you're going to have to deal with taxes. You're going to have to deal with the regulations and the processes that exist. If you're in a business where you provide food or drugs, and I'm not talking about the illegal drugs, but legal drugs, you know, your restaurant business or candy store or something like that, you're going to probably at some point deal with the FDA or the Food and Drug Administration. Now, you might deal with them on the federal level, and you also might deal with them on the local level. And if you're involved with, you know, some factory business or something of that nature, something that affects our natural resources, like even dealing with cigarettes or the e-cigarettes, the electronic cigarettes, you're going to deal with some point with the EPA because you're dealing with the air, you know. So you're going to deal with all of these types of entities, and there are regulations that the governmental agencies have. Now, these are quasi-legal, these are quasi-law places. They're more administrative. However, they do have rights to prosecute individuals for violations that are usually fines, unless they're like extensive, like some of the major, and some of you guys wrote about this. One of you guys wrote about, I remember, the spills, the major oil spill in the water and stuff like that, putting out, releasing chemicals into our bodies of water, those kinds of things. So these are the types of agencies that are on the federal level, and you know, you'll find it only on the state level. And so it talks about agencies that have to do with, for example, an agency is formed. Now let me explain something to you. I just got through talking about agencies and regulations. I didn't mean agencies like I'm getting ready to talk about them now. And when I say agencies here, I'm going to reduce it to the most simplest form so you understand it. I'm not, trust me, guys, I took the bar exam. They go in depth with this stuff. I'm not doing that to you. I'm going to make it really simple. But there are always exceptions to this. So when we're talking about agencies now, what we're talking about is when someone operates does something for another. I'll just read this and then I'm going to talk about it. An agency is formed when a principal appoints another party. That party is called an agent to enter into contracts on their behalf. A common example is when a buyer of a house enlists a real estate agent to sell their home. The creation of the agency allows the business owners to delegate duties so they can be in multiple places conducting transactions. So now here's an example of an agency similar to that. All right. I work in a store, and I am selling you items. Let's just use Walmart since they're real big. Okay, so Walmart is the principal. The principal is the one who possesses the items or actually has control over the items. And then they appoint you as cashier, salesperson, whatever, manager, the greeter. They're all agents. So if they do something, they can do something on behalf of Walmart, or they can do something to get Walmart in trouble. So if you sue Walmart, the reason why you will sue Walmart is not because of Walmart, the name. You'll sue them because some agent for the company did something that harms you, and you will probably sue those individuals as agents, but you will, the ones who have what we call the deep pockets, the ones with the money, good old Sam Walton, you know, the founder, he's dead, but his corporation that exists, and we'll talk about that a little later, or limited partnership. But in this case, I think it's corporation that would be sued in terms of that. So somebody's mic open up again. Close it up. Thank you. So anyway, so the agency relationship operates on a regular basis. Okay, let me show you. I work for Rasmussen College. I am a professor for Rasmussen College. Rasmussen is the principal, and I'm the agent. Okay, so that's an example. So basically, it's almost like employer-employee, or one who's appointed. The example here of a real estate agent is that a person who is selling their house, they have authority, but they appoint that authority to the realtor to perform the services for them. But the one who has the final say-so about it is the principal, who is the seller. Okay? So a person comes to you to sell you widgets. We talked about them earlier. Widgets. X company sells widgets. And John Doe is a widget salesman. And John Doe says to you, okay, that the price of these widgets is $5 a widget. When in reality, the real deal on it is $10. But he has put into a contract with you $5, and you, relying on that, will sign the contract and agree. Then it gets back to the corporate office, and the corporate office looks and says, we can't do that. We're going to lose money. So probably, would you say, just based on what you know already, that the agent would have to honor that? Yes or no? Yep. The answer is yes. Now, you might get into the issue about, well, maybe there was mistakes made. There's a big, how you gonna make a mistake between $5 and $10? You know, those kind of things. So it's no, it's what you agreed to. All right. So who's going to end up probably getting fired is the agent. But the point of the matter is that they're going to be stuck with the loss because you're going to rely on that. There's a whole argument we lawyers make called the reliance argument, which is a common sense argument. Say we went into this deal and that's what we counted on. That's what we did. We relied upon our expectations. Now I'm getting legal with talking to you, but that's the way lawyers talk. But if you stop and think, it's common sense. You know, it says, I bought these widgets and I thought it was a good deal, and your representative who put it together, and I signed it, and we initialed it. Therefore, the agent binds the principal. Here we go. Okay. And so the agent, you know, if something happens, oh, here's another example. If I'm working for a company, let's say I'm an ambulance driver for Acme Ambulance Company, and I get into an accident. This is kind of same thing, but it's tortious. We're talking about torts, which is accident, but here's the idea of principal and agency is what I'm talking about. So the driver gets into an accident. Who's responsible? Okay, this is assuming that you didn't do anything wrong. Who's responsible for the accident? Is Acme responsible? Then it says no. Is Acme responsible? They're driving. The driver is driving for Acme. Is the driver responsible? Okay. You're right on one part and wrong on the other. The driver is responsible because they were the ones who did it, but so too is Acme because they are that driver is a agent of Acme, which is the principal. So they're held. The agent is held responsible for the acts of the principal. And it's just like the Walmart situation. You would probably sue them both, but the one who, and then probably the agent would probably have some insurance or indemnification. It's a whole other thing. Protection from by the agent. I mean by the principal, in case they get into an accident, insurance or something or the other. Anyway, the bottom line is you begin to see the point. So then there's some other rules. I won't get into what we call frolic and detours, but and how to operate outside the scope of an agency, because that's we're getting real deep. You know, I don't want to do that to you. But anyway, you can take a look at this law. It says the structure of fiduciary law. Let me tell you what the word fiduciary means. Fiduciary simply means this is the responsibility to perform within the scope of what you're supposed to be doing. Let me give you this. Okay, I am a professor teaching you business law, and I'm going to teach you business law, but I am not going to have you call me and say, Professor Wright, could you draft me a contract since you're an attorney, and I will do that. If I did that, number one, there are two things wrong with that. First of all, number one, I'm retired, so I don't practice, but I still know the topic. So I can't accept a fee as a lawyer, and I wouldn't. But the other thing that's wrong is that it's outside the scope of what you are doing with me because of the fact that I'm hired to be your professor and teacher. I can help you and tell you, People call me all the time that are students and ask me for help, and I direct them. But I ultimately will tell them that you do need to get a lawyer. I will give you some information that you can use for working with it. So my whole point is that I'm a fiduciary of Rasmussen, and I'm hired to teach. And I can teach you criminal law in business law, because there's elements of criminal law in business law. As I already told you, fines, you already have learned that from dealing with the Ponzi stuff and those various schemes that take place and so forth and so on. So anyway, that's what a fiduciary is, one who acts on behalf of another, and they're supposed to operate in good faith and performing according to the terms of what their role is that they're supposed to be doing, okay? So that's agencies. Partnerships. A partnership is as a result of a written or oral contract, either expressed or implied. Expressed means that it's either written or either it can be stated. Implied means based upon the circumstances and situations that exist. We'll talk about that not much because of the fact that I don't want to get too heavily into that, but I'm just going to say to you a few things. In which the parties join together. So two parties come together as a business. They could be partners. They're partners, John and Joe, to sell cars. They're a partnership. Now, that could be a legal entity, which we're going to talk about in a minute, and that's either general or limited partnership. But there are other ways too. Now, let me show you what I'm talking about. The general partnership is governed by what we call the Uniform Partnership Act. All states except the people who have the Napoleonic Code, Louisiana. So of the 50 states, 49 have an association of two or more persons who come together as owners to run a business for profit. For profit. For profit. Notice it has to be for profit. There are not-for-profits, but they are not called for profit. If a company doesn't make a profit, it's still a for-profit. The basic is what the intention of the entity is established for, to make money, to come out on the green side and not the red side. Okay. Limited partnership is where two or more persons come together under the state, whatever state they're in, under their Limited Partnership Act or statute, with one or more general partners. These are the people who might run the business on a daily basis, but then there are some behind-the-scenes people, maybe some investors who are partners in the firm, and these are limited partners. And that's the very simple way of putting it. But in the most simple way, a partnership is two people coming together to operate a business. Now, we got the flashcards here, but before I do that, I want to talk about this. I want to talk about Module 4, the business organization advantages and disadvantages. Now, in the sole proprietorship, I don't even have to do this. Sole means what? The word sole means what? Same word. It means the same as the word uno, which means what? Anybody know what that means? Sole or uno? There you go. It's one. And it means, and it says here, one person owns a business, and they're the only ones who own it. And then they talk about the advantage, the things you can do, and so forth. It said this allows you to pay less in taxes, yes and no. The disadvantages, though, is that, and I said this already to one of you in my discussion post, that I did this morning, early this morning, that a sole proprietorship will open you up to liability for your personal assets, lawsuits, and so forth. So let's say you own a daycare, and if you own a daycare, and if that daycare is sued and you lose, and you have a big house, how do you say you're going to lose that house? You would if you were in a sole proprietorship, because the company, the liability of the company go to the owner. So that means that everything that they own that's in their name is going to be subject to becoming part of settling that debt. So you can lose everything that you own in a situation like that. All right? So now let's get into a general partnership. We already kind of talked about that. The general partnership, I said, is controlled by the Partnership Act. Two or more persons come together to make money. Partners are able to put their money together, can be terminated under the terms of the agreement, partnership agreement, which has to align with and not be go against the Partnership Act for the jurisdiction in which the partnership is initiated. Okay, so it's like the sole proprietorship, and here's the disadvantages. Except the only difference in the sole proprietorship and the partnership is what? So far as I've said, is what? For the sake of time, we have the number of people. That's the answer. You can't have a partnership. There's no such thing as a sole partnership. It's sole proprietorship. But partnership in itself means automatically dos, or two. However, some disadvantages is all the partners, even if they had nothing to do with it, if they did not, if the partnerships did not create a partnership agreement, then they are all equally responsible for the losses of the partnership. Once again, so they can lose everything too. It's just now twice as many people that can lose stuff. So now that's the simplest form. Then the limited partnership is, again, where two or more, and then the advantages is when the general partnership creates a liability, the limited partner's liability is limited. It is limited to the amount of the investment that the person, so they won't lose anymore. If they're a limited partner and they invested $10,000 and the judgment is for $100,000, and they can only get $70,000 out of the general partners, you can only go to that limited partner for the $10,000. You can't go for nothing else. And so it has to be formed by complying with the requirements of the state statute. A limited partner may not operate the management of the business. So basically, it's just an investment for them, okay, which they want an ROI that's high, a return on their investment. So now let's get to the corporation. The corporation is usually the friend of most businesses because the corporation itself is a person. When you set up a corporation, you set up a charter. The corporation is an individual company, like McDonald's Corporation is an individual company. So it says the legal entity that the state issues a charter, and the owners themselves, even though they're shareholders, I'm talking about not in a not-for-profit, because there are no shareholders in a not-for-profit corporation. I'm talking about in a for-profit, or what we call a subchapter S. I'm not going to get into that. That has to do with taxes. But anyway, if the word corporation is involved and it's for a business, then we're talking about that right now. And this is very general, I'm giving you. This is a working knowledge of it. So it's distinct. So I can own 100% of the shares as a sole proprietor, But if I incorporated it, that means that you can't go after my personal assets because you're going to see one of the advantages, the liability is limited to amount of their investment, which is the corporation. There are many different types of corporations based upon the needs, and I told you that, such as nonprofit, closely held, corporation subchapter S. I'm not going to get into those. But just for all practical purposes of general knowledge, a corporation provides separation. So the assets of the corporation are subject to being taken, but not the person can be a multi-billionaire, and they can't. You can't. Now the disadvantages is that a corporation has unlimited liability for the corporate's obligations. So there are many state regulations that surround the formation and dissolution. Now, for example, but if the corporation does something, and I'm not going to get into it, but I'll use the term, it's called pierce the corporate veil. So if you run across it, that means simply that, aha, what I did was I took the corporation protection away, and now I can go after those individuals themselves and their assets outside of that. So the bottom line is that the corporation also provides tax protection because the taxes of the corporation are not the taxes of the individual. It is a totally different. Remember what I said. You file what's called with the IRS a corporate tax form, and you don't. And individuals file 1040, 1040A, and those kind of things. Okay. And then the last entity that we're going to talk about pretty much is the limited liability company. Now, then we call those LLCs. Now, let me say this to you. The LLC and the corporations, what has happened is a lot of professional organizations like lawyers, accountants, and doctors have used either one or both of these, one or these or the other. And what it does, it protects them because they have a lot of stuff that they want to protect. So it's kind of as it says, it's a hybrid form of business of what provides. And the primary thing here is, it's in the name, limited liability. So that it's treated like a partnership for tax purposes, but it has the same advantages of partnerships. Similar to a sole proprietorship, it can be created with only one person, and LLC can participate in the everyday management of the business. So there's some, and then they get to the disadvantages. Are not the right formation if you want to take your company stock. There's no stock in those. There are liability issues that are separate as well, which we won't get into to dealing with here. So if you ever pay attention to people who are lawyers, and you'll see the words, you'll see behind them either the word Inc., INC, Corp, CORP, LLC, you now know what that stands for. And then there are other designations depending on the jurisdictions that you're in. But what that means is that, like for example, a lot of lawyers say, like I had Richard H. Wright and Associates. I didn't do this because my associates weren't my partners. I was the sole proprietor of it, but I had malpractice insurance. But here's what I'm going to say. Now, if I was practicing, I would incorporate my name. I'd take Richard H. Wright, attorney at law, and then I would set up myself an LLC to protect myself. Or either I could do a corporation, depending on however I want to do it. So the point of the matter is that you're providing a basis for protection. And so these are just some of the things. It's a little bit after time, but I wanted to take the time to go over those with you. Now, for these terms, activity flashcards, I want you to take the time yourself on your own, and then, like I said, you can click the speak box, and it tells you what it is, and you can flip it, and so it tells you whether you're authorized as actual authority, and then you could do the next one. An agent, you already should know that. So you can study your whole, apparent authority sounds like what it says. Authority that appears, that is regularly. I'm kind of like showing you how the term is, but look at what it says. So that means that the person has allowed them to operate the apparent authority. That's what the other person sees. So if I'm selling you something from Walmart, I'm working in there, it's probably that apparent authority has been given to me to sell. Probably what else probably indicates to you is you see my badge and my Walmart jacket, that kind of thing. Fiduciary, and it tells you what that is, acting. So you're committed to doing the best for that individual, not embezzlement or working for your own benefit. That's like insurance or protection. So those kinds of things. So so anyway, that's that's that. All right. So now I am obligated to tell you something. First of all, any questions? Any questions? You can type them in the chat. Okay. All right. Appears no questions. So here's what I'm going to say. Here is the word: corporations. Corporations. That's it. So I'm going to say good night to you guys. Again, if you have any questions, any concerns, you know what to do. You know how to do it. And now you also are conscious again, but you got to stay focused on the issues of APA. Not too many hit the Grammarly issue, but APA cover pages, length of pages that the assignment requires, the minimum standards that it states in there that must be done to maximize getting your grades, and you'll perform very well. So I'm going to say good night to each of you. Okay.